John Stockton The Brutal Truth. The player which we are going to talk about today is the all-time leader of not one but two of the 5 major statistical categories in basketball, but retired without an NBA championship, the one and only John Stockton. Some play a position exquisitely, just as it was designed. That would be John Stockton at point guard. A fast, gritty, durable player who saw the floor as well as anyone who ever played the game. He left the NBA after 19 seasons with the Utah Jazz, holding a massive assists records, including the career mark, 15,806. As Stockton giveth, he taketh away. He led the league in steals twice, and, with a career total of 3,265, he retired as the NBA's all-time leader. He also played all 82 games in 17 of his 19 seasons, and his career shooting percentage was .515, a remarkable statistic for a guard. The Jazz never missed the playoffs during Stockton's career, and they reached the Western Conference Finals 5 times in a 7-year span. Stockton's other assists records included most in a season, 1,164, the highest average for a season, 14.5 assists per game, and most seasons leading the league and most consecutive seasons leading the league, 9. He also shared the record for most assists in a playoff game, 24, had the second highest assists average for a career, 10.5 assists per game, and tied for third for most assists in a regular season game, 28. The greatest duo to never win the championship. Malone and Stockton had the best chemistry. Their pick-and-roll game was deadly. What made the Jazz duo successful was their ability to read each other perfectly on the basketball court. They may have not won a championship together or make the nightly highlights of ESPN SportsCenter, but the Utah Jazz duo of John Stockton and Karl Malone combined for 18 seasons were consistent, hard-working, and that thought of the team instead of their individual accolades. If you're a child of the 90s, the phrase Stockton to Malone sometimes made more sense than peanut butter and jelly. How good was this point guard, power forward combination? In their 18 seasons together, they helped lead Utah to 5 Midwest Division titles, 12 regular seasons of 50 wins or more, including back-to-back regular seasons of 64 wins in 1996-97, a franchise record back in 1997, and 62 regular season wins in 1998. Both years, the Jazz made it to the NBA Finals, but ran into Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls and lost in 6 games. It's difficult to fathom just how many assists this combo tallied during the players' prime seasons. Consider first that both players stayed incredibly healthy. When Malone was on the Jazz, he played 1,434 of a possible 1,444 games, 99.3%. Stockton played 1,504 of a possible 1,526 games, 98.6%. Stockton to Malone ranked first in the NBA in total assists in 2000 to 2001. The combo ranked second in 2001 to 2002. And it ranked first again in 2002-03, as Stockton completed his career with the only franchise he'd ever known. They just knew what to do on the court together, almost like muscle memory, and if it wasn't for Jordan and the Bulls, they would have won a couple of NBA titles. Dirty play by Stockton. Dirty NBA players come in all shapes and sizes. Dirty play comes in different forms too. There's blatant dirty and sneaky dirty. There's tough dirty and mouthy dirty. There's hard dirty and dirty. There's physical dirty and trash-talking dirty. Some players would take exception to being called dirty. Some would wear the label proudly. Some would be insulted if you said they weren't dirty. John Stockton is placed among the dirtiest players in NBA history. Of course, some people will disagree with that because, well, he's John Stockton. But ask any NBA player from the past 2 decades this question, and they'll all give you the same answer. If this guy was 6 inches taller, he'd have set the record for most personal fouls. But he knew he could get away with a hard elbow to the torso, so he did it to everyone. Stockton made a living of setting screens low and then rolling off and throwing the ball to a wide-open Malone because the defender was laying on the floor holding his knee. The 8-time world champion, Steve Kerr, called Stockton a dirty bastard. As the most infamous elbow thrower in NBA history, if Stockton were given $1 for every time he connected with another man's head, he would have made more than his NBA salary. John Stockton was the master and commander of the sneaky, scratching, clawing, hip-checking, dirty point guards. Everyone since has just been a cheap imitation. Even Dennis Rodman the Worm called him a dirty player. Playing in Utah was a nightmare for NBA teams. If every foul the Jazz committed had been called, they would be out of players before the first half ended. Instead, they were generally ignored. A capable scorer. In addition to being the highest assist point guard with 15,806 careers assist with an average of 10.5 per game, Stockton was also a capable scorer, 13.1 points per game career average and a 51.5 career shooting percentage, with a reliable three-point shot, 38.4% lifetime average. As of May 1, 2021, he is 49th on the all-time NBA scoring list with 19,711 career points. He averaged 13.1 points, 10.5 assists, 2.7 rebounds, and 2.2 steals in 1,504 regular season games. John Stockton's career high in points was 34, moderate by the standards of the likes of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, or even his prolific teammate Karl Malone, yet you get the feeling that every point Stockton ever scored was more significant than that of most players because his points always seemed to come at the most critical times. Physical fitness. John Stockton missed only 22 games in his 19-season career, 18 of those in one season. In his prime, Stockton was supremely athletic in every way with the possible exception of jumping ability. Stockton was exceptionally strong for someone his size. He often set brutal screens against much larger players. When he drove to the basket, he used his deceptively strong body to muscle his way through bigger defenders. Stockton was lightning quick. Even Michael Jordan and Gary the Glove Payton could not stay in front of him. I remember one sequence where the Bulls tried to shut down Stockton by having Michael Jordan guard him. That didn't last long. The Jazz simply cleared everyone out of the lane so Stockton could attack Jordan one-on-one. He beat Jordan to the basket multiple times. You rarely saw Jordan guard Stockton after that. What really cements it for Stockton is the hands. Being able to comfortably palm a basketball means he could dunk with his hand mostly under the ball instead of having to go all the way over it to push it down. This saves him at least 8 inches of the required height. For his career, Stockton averaged almost 32 minutes per game. Part of this was Coach Sloan's habit of pulling Stockton from the first quarter at the 6-minute mark. I always thought that was an interesting philosophy. Maybe this helped him play almost every game possible of his lengthy career. If you measure athleticism by highlight reel dunks, then you will erroneously conclude that Stockton wasn't very athletic. By every other measure, Stockton was a gifted athlete who maximized his talents through hard work, gritty competitiveness, and unselfish team play. Consistency and longevity. In the NBA, and in basketball in general, consistency is something all players must have. Consistency separates the good players from the great players. The superstars from the role players. When speaking about consistency in the NBA, just because any 12th man averages 1 point and half a steal each game, it doesn't make him great. Those who perform at the highest levels night in and night out are truly the best players in the NBA. When I think about the longevity and consistency in the NBA, John Stockton's name is one that comes to mind. He remained a starting NBA player until his retirement at age 41 and played 19 seasons in the NBA while at the same time missing only 22 games during that period, which is an astonishing feat when you think about it. Rarely few players in NBA history can say they've been so durable and consistent for a significant majority of their career, and Stockton did just that. In his 1,504 regular season games, Stockton accumulated many assists and steals that it's almost impossible for anyone to break these records. It's worth mentioning that he made the playoffs every year since he entered the league in 1984 until he officially retired in 2003, playing for the same Utah Jazz team that drafted him in the first place. Perhaps one of the accomplishments that show the consistency of John Stockton has nothing to do with anything in the stat sheet. As a point guard, being a leader is one of the most key pieces you must have. You begin almost every position with the ball and need to put your team in the best position to score, every time down the floor. As you have seen, with the great passer Stockton is, you have to believe he has some level of leadership, but not as high as you expect. Keep in mind, John Stockton played 19 seasons in the NBA. Loyalty to Utah Jazz. Perhaps no other achievement is more applauded in sport than the outcome of a player finishing their career with the same team they started with. The careers of Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, and Kobe Bryant, to name a few, are indefinitely looked at through rose-tinted glasses, due to their tenures only having taken place with one franchise. You can't say that Stockton wasn't coveted by many an organization in his Jazz tenure. Quite the opposite in fact, as Stockton did turn down potential big money contracts as well as the chance to play in bigger markets with more athletic players. Most memorable in my mind was the year his contract was to expire and the Miami Heat were prepared to pay him 5 times what he was making in Utah when he became a free agent later that summer. When Stockton was asked about it after a game late in the season, Stockton simply said, "I could care less, I'm loyal to Utah and always will be." He wasn't kidding. Stockton was one of those players who always admitted that NBA players like himself were way overpaid and that the least he could do was to be loyal to the owner and fans. As a basketball player, John Stockton was one of a kind, a statistical marvel. But as impressive as his numbers are, that tenure remains as significant as any statistical achievement. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe down below. Until next time.